What do people generally respond with?
Well, the response seems to depend on how directly exposed to the argument they have been. So people who have read the original paper that I published in Philosophical Quarterly a few years ago, or who have heard me give the full explanation, they are usually intrigued and find the argument quite persuasive, most of them. People who read second-hand accounts of it, or third-hand accounts, I think it's increasingly far-fetched, especially if they don't actually hear the argument behind the claim, but just the idea that we are in a simulation.
If you walked up to someone and just said we're in a simulation right now and didn't give any reasons for it, I'm presuming they'd be a little more skeptical than when they've actually read your... It runs to about 11 pages, right, your paper? I've read it over the weekend.
It's a short one. I mean, it's like 10, 15 pages or something.
But, I'm sitting here thinking about this as the guy's talking to me, and I just don't know, folks, if he really believes it himself. The logic is impeccable as far as I can see, but, friends, it's a pretty surprising conclusion. We're all made of silicon, not just Pam Anderson, but all of us.
Steady.
A little shocking. So, bearing in mind the three conclusions now, one of which is true. Number one, we go extinct before we get good enough at computers to do it. Number two, we get good enough to make the human simulations, but we decide not to for some reason. Or number three, the only other option, we're in a simulation right now. Bearing those three options in mind, I asked him, really, come on, what do you believe?
What I believe is the simulation argument. But that argument, as I just mentioned, only tries to show that one of three possibilities is correct. And so I'm agnostic as to which of those three possibilities it is.
Right, so you're not exactly arguing that we are in a simulation. You're saying that there's a possibility. Now, I've heard you say a couple of times that you give the chance of us being in a simulation right now, about 20%. So you've assigned one of the other hypotheses a higher chance, right?
Yeah,
do you think we go extinct before we develop the capability, or what do you think is the most likely scenario?
Well, I think I've been quoted as saying that my gut feeling is that there is a 20% probability that we are in a simulation.
But 20% is still pretty damn high. And, if you were to do as Dr. Nick suggests in this paper and maybe you were to assign each of the three options an equal probability of being true, then there's a 33% chance we're in a simulation right now. Not very comforting. And I'm beginning not to like these odds very much. I have one more clip here, guys, about speculating, because once you establish this kind of probability, the mind starts to wander a little bit. Here we go.
I mean, you could speculate. You could imagine that there is this super intelligent entity that creates these simulations in order to predict if there are any other similar entities in the universe and what they would be like.
Yeah.
You can make all sorts of scenarios. You could imagine people using this as some sort of historical tourism in the future. So you could step into a virtual environment simulation of the past. If time travel is impossible, the second best thing might be to create a very realistic simulation, and then maybe these...
That's an interesting thought, because it could be the case then that some of the people that we see around us are imposters from the future engaged in, like you say, virtual tourism.
Yeah, there are many possibilities.
What if the creators of the simulation have gone extinct themselves, and it's just a kind of self-replicating system now running on automation?
Possible. It doesn't seem so likely.
Yeah, don't be so stupid, son. Like what he'd just been saying made more sense.
That's great. Your idea.
Don't be ridiculous, son. Let's keep the conversation down to earth here. What do you think this is, Star Trek?
Brilliant.
Well, anyway, I thought the whole thing was very interesting, and I thought you might like to hear about it. I'll be fascinated to find out what you think. It's possible to get even crazier, by the way, with the speculations if you want. For example, what happens when we start making our own ancestor simulations? That means there's a possibility of a simulation inside a simulation, and we could simulate other people even though we're simulated ourselves, and the people simulating us right now might be simulated themselves, and even if they're not, based on Dr. Nick's argument, there's a good reason they should suspect that they are. Now, after hearing the argument, Tommy, Matt, Stuart, what do you think the probability is? Dr. Nick said 20%. 20%. Remember, the only other options are extinction, or we don't ever make the ancestor simulations. I really have no idea what I'm talking about. But
we liked your idea best, the one the one that floored him, because you come onto a radio thing knowing that your theory is a little bit out there, expecting the DJ to call you a nut, and I think he was on the point of calling you a nut. I mean, it was a beautiful juxtaposition. Very well done. That was fascinating.
It was good.
Is this the kind of stuff that you do on your show?
Not all the time, no. I mean, it's certainly a strange discussion to be having. One of the things he was asked is whether or not they would have the computing power to keep this infinite amount of simulations within simulations running all at the same time. And, of course, he said that's impossible. So they thought maybe all the simulations are terminated when they try to run their own simulations inside of the first one. And, if that's true, I think we should kill the scientist that's going to try and do it. I don't want to be terminated.
No.
I like life too much. We should hunt him down and kill him. That's what I'm saying.
Painfully. Okay, listen, when we come back, we'll have John with us still, and we'll talk a little bit about that interesting but nutty idea, which reminds me of everybody's been to these zoos where they provide a realistic environment for the animals, don't they? We've seen chimpanzees and lions and things in parts of Africa built in the middle of, a built-up city area. Mm-hmm. And when we see that, it kind of occurs to us, doesn't it, to think to ourselves, supposing if those chimps and lions believe they're in a piece of Africa, supposing our lives are like that and we're in some kind of interplanetary zoo and they've managed to create what appears to us to be a realistic world circa 2007, but in actual fact what is happening, if we were only able to, see through the mist, the wall of that subterfuge, is a whole bunch of aliens with their children in pushchairs going past, going, "What's this one?" Oh, it's Homo sapiens.
PlayRadioUK.com. Just great music.
Looking for an easy way to increase revenues for your business? With the world-exclusive Play Radio Stream launch advert, we can tell over 1 million listeners a month about your business and how to buy your products and services. This fantastic opportunity is available exclusively to only one advertiser each month. So make sure you're the one and start increasing profits today. For full details, go to playradiouk.com/sales or call 01243 55 63 55.
This bank holiday, we celebrate chart toppers with nothing but #1 records on PlayRadioUK.com. Hit after hit. Nothing but #1s. Nothing but #1 hit records. Don't miss this Bank Holiday Monday on PlayRadioUK.com. Dynamic Diction with Tommy and Duncan on Play Radio UK. Beware, the content of this show may offend.
Ooh, Dynamic Diction.
Yeah, nice. It's actually, Duncan has had a family gathering today, something that's been in his diary for quite a while. Stuart is here, Matt's around, hello. James is somewhere, Lee is somewhere else. In the United States, John Wright has just very kindly put together live a terrific package of, what's the guy's name again, John?
Guy is Dr. Nick Bostrom. He's an Oxford University professor.
We've been getting some feedback on the various chat lines that are running adjacent with the chat. Stuart?
Somebody said he's probably written at least 3 Star Trek scripts, this guy. Somebody else says, let's hope they're not simulating on Windows, because it'll crash.
That's absolutely true.
Chucky Egg, apparently, which was a really old game, apparently is an early simulation of life.
Okay.
And somebody else said if it was a computer game, then it should be Jet Set Willy, because it's far more interesting than the one we're having now.
Yeah. Matt, what's your thought?
Well, I was just thinking that if we were in a simulation and the simulation was run by somebody, then that somebody looking at the simulation would be thinking about this Oxford University professor that, hang on a minute, he's about to figure out that he's living in a simulation, so we should de-simulate him before he does figure out it's a simulation and everything goes wrong.
Did he sound like he suspected there might have been a contract out on him, John? No.
Maybe. I mean, I wonder what would happen if we all held up huge signs to the sky all at once saying, "We know what you're up to, let us out of here, you bastard." There's the chance they'd all smite us, isn't there? I love that word, smite.
Smite.
But, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that maybe he would be, he might be on their hit list.